catch myself, I will correct myself. So there's going to be a certain roughness, as I say, in the presentation. But at the same time, I hope it will gain in spontaneity, and that is more interesting for you to hear somebody sort of flub his way along rather than to have a lecture read at you. So, a little bit of personal background. First of all, you should know somewhat where I'm coming from on this. I am, by training and by disposition, a historian, an academic historian. And I have spent most of my adult life studying these two men and the circumstances of their lives and the circumstances of their movements. More particularly, I am Islamicist. Let's say I was trained in the study of Islam, most particularly. And I have written, for example, on books on Muhammad and the origins of Islam, on the history of Mecca, which is Muhammad's hometown, the history of the Hajj, or the Muslim pilgrimage, all of these studies, historical studies of classical Islam. But what interests me about Islam is not simply it as a phenomenon, which is interesting in itself, but because of my more general background, I suppose, I am interested in the comparative study of Islam and Christianity, and of course Judaism. I mean, there's no point in just taking just Christianity and Islam. Judaism is the sibling of the other two, and the three of them constitute a family, a religious family. They're all peas out of the same pod, to speak very theologically. And so I have devoted a lot of my writing career and teaching to the comparative study of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And I have published on that subject as well. I'm not going to weary you with a list of my books. If you have any sort of interest in it, either prurient or actually commercial, which is what we're really looking for, I just recommend that you go to Amazon.com and take a look. You can see almost everything I publish, everything that's certainly in print. To get back to the title of the course, The Quest, it's a shameless piece of pilfery, I must admit. In 1906, a famous scholar named Albert Schweitzer, who, when I was growing up, I thought Albert Schweitzer was chiefly famous for being a medical missionary in Africa, which he was. I remember very distinctly looking at issues of Life magazine, which had large spreads of him in Lamborghini, Lambaréné, where he did his medical missionary work. And I also knew, because I was a sophisticated kid, I also knew that he was a Bach scholar. You believe that, you'll believe anything. But it's only when I began to get into the study of religion that I discovered that the real achievement of Albert Schweitzer was his work on the historical Jesus, and particularly this book that he wrote published in 1906, called The Quest for the Historical Jesus, called in its English translation that, which marks a milestone, really, in the search for Jesus, for the reality of Jesus, the historical quality of Jesus. These terms are all a little bit fuzzy at this stage, so you just have to put up with it. We'll sharpen exactly what it is we're looking for as we go along. At any rate, this quest for the historical Jesus, as I say, was a kind of watershed. It stopped the quest for Jesus in its tracks and started off on an entirely different route, which persists today, that the influence of Schweitzer's book is still very much in evidence today. So the quest is a kind of short form of the title of his book, and it represents a shorthand form of the historian's search for the historical figure named Jesus of Nazareth. And as we'll see, eventually, there was a similar, quote, quest in the same technical sense of historical critical search concerning the life of Muhammad. So quest is, as I say, it's a little piece of larceny from Albert Schweitzer, but one can get away with that by simply calling it homage to Albert Schweitzer. So it is a search into the search concerning the two men. But why? Why should there be a quest for either Jesus or Muhammad? I mentioned at the outset that these are two of the best-known people in the history of the universe. They are the founding figures of two religious communities which presently number close to 1 billion members.